Tornadoes are possible this Father's Day, and over 30 million Americans are at risk, but I'm not expecting a major outbreak today. The severe weather doesn't stop today, though, as we are expecting more severe weather throughout early this week, and some long-range models are hinting at a possible very active period of severe weather developing for the last couple days of June and into the first week of July. An area of localized spin at the surface associated with last night's severe weather will move out of Kansas towards Missouri and eventually all the way into Illinois and Indiana, and that's going to promote the deepening of a low pressure system, which could bring all hazards of severe weather to us later this afternoon. Now, there are a multitude of fail modes associated with today's severe weather, so the Storm Prediction Center has opted to stick with a 2 out of 5 slight risk for the time being. However, as things continue to progress throughout the morning and afternoon, they may upgrade those probabilities. I'm going to break down everything that you need to know so that you can stay safe this Father's Day. So let's get right into the forecast. All right, jumping right into our categorical outlook, we do have a slight 2 out of 5 risk in place, like I mentioned. That is the highest we've got right now. However, that may be upgraded, and the tornado probabilities may be upgraded as well, as some of these morning features kind of get worked out and we have a better picture of what things are going to look like this afternoon. This slight risk, though, does stretch all the way from Nebraska down to Oklahoma City, and then back all the way up through St. Louis, Kansas City, Indianapolis, all the way through Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and portions of Kentucky and slivers of Southwest Ohio as well. Jumping into our tornado probabilities, we do have a 2% region outlined throughout Kansas and Nebraska. I'm not terribly concerned about that area with tornadoes. It's more of a hail threat. But our main concern is this 2% region all the way from Oklahoma City and back through Indianapolis. And you can see that black hatched SIG 1 risk in there, and that is going to be the area of greatest concern. And the brown areas where you have a 5% risk for tornadoes. So throughout eastern Missouri and southern Illinois, maybe into southwestern Indiana, that's my greatest concern for the potential for a couple strong tornadoes. But we have to monitor it very closely throughout this morning as we see as things progress. Because like I said, there's a lot of fail modes with this that could completely mitigate our tornado threat into the afternoon and evening. Taking a look at our wind threat, we do have a 5% region that stretches all the way through Indianapolis down to Oklahoma City, and then back up through Nebraska. And we have a SIG 1 region outlined from near Oklahoma City and back through Kansas, and even getting into an area of eastern Colorado just east of Denver. That yellow that you are seeing in there is in fact a 15% risk for wind damage. And then looking at our hail risk, like I said, further out west in the Central Plains is where our main concern is, but we do have a hail risk that extends all the way through southern Illinois, and even a lower percentage hail risk that goes all the way through Indianapolis. But my greatest area of concern is really out here in the Central Plains in western Kansas and the Nebraska Panhandle, even in eastern Colorado, where we could see some more significant hail producing storms. And as I mentioned before, we're not out of the woods after Father's Day, as we have a 2 out of 5 slight risk that encapsulates a lot of the country here, especially with that marginal risk, all the way from the mid-Atlantic and then back through the Central Plains again through Nebraska, Wyoming, even into South Dakota, getting towards the high plains there. This is all going to be driven by a new wave in our atmosphere that'll form off the Rocky Mountains and connect with a bunch of shortwave action going on all the way towards the East Coast and mid-Atlantic. So we'll have kind of 2 different regions of severe weather that will be connected. Looking at our probabilistic outlook for Monday, we do only have a 2% region that encapsulates Maryland, the Virginias, Delaware, and southern New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So that's going to be out here in the mid-Atlantic. The risks associated with wind and hail are going to be a little more significant, though, as we do have a 15% region all the way from the Carolinas and up through the Virginias, even into New Jersey, as I mentioned before, with another area for a wind risk that extends all the way through the Central Plains. And then finally, looking at our hail risk on Monday, we do have quite the large SIG 1 risk that extends all the way from Lubbock and near Odessa, Texas, all the way back through the Badlands of South Dakota and into Wyoming near Cheyenne as well. Taking a look into the future, this is for Tuesday, where we already have a 2 out of 5 slight risk in place, the same level of risk as today, a couple of days in advance. So that's definitely slightly concerning. My main risk is going to be from Amarillo all the way back through Denver in this interior red circle. That's where my biggest concern is for possible robust severe weather and intense severe weather. Looking all the way ahead at Wednesday's severe weather risk, we do have a 15% region outlined for Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Denver, Colorado. That's probably going to expand a little bit as we get towards Wednesday. We also have a somewhat similar 15% region that includes Cheyenne and even getting up towards the Badlands of South Dakota, and that is going to be for Thursday. After that, as we move into Friday, Saturday, and even Sunday, I am expecting things to probably calm down just a little bit before they ramp up again into the following week, which will be the last couple days of June and the first week of July, where things might get more active yet again. I did want to quickly highlight just some general temperatures around the country. We are expecting things to get pretty warm here. Here's by peak heating. You can see down in Texas, Lubbock and Odessa getting up to 105, 106 degrees Fahrenheit. But a lot of areas throughout the country on this Father's Day are going to be pretty pleasant. Upper 80s in areas like Boise, Salt Lake City, on the West Coast in the 60s and 70s, into the East Coast, getting up into the 80s, so a little bit warm, but still pretty pleasant. And then out in the Midwest, 75 in St. Louis, 82 Indianapolis, around 60 in Chicago, getting to 65 or so in Sioux Falls, and into the low 70s in the Northern Plains near Billings, Montana, Bismarck and Fargo, North Dakota, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. I also wanted to take a look at the surface moisture. You're going to see it surging up north towards the Ozarks into Illinois, as well as all the way up into Kansas and parts of the Central Plains as well. That is going to bring the moisture that we need in the low levels to potentially get some of that severe weather going. Looking at our cloud cover, this is going to provide one of our possible fail modes with today's severe weather. As you're going to see throughout all of Illinois, Indiana, and Missouri, we're just not getting these clouds to break up and allow for some of that daytime heating to generate the instability that we may need in order to get today's severe weather event going into the afternoon and early evening hours. We're going to take a look at our 850 millibar vorticity, and you can literally watch this low pressure system develop here near Kansas City and move all the way into central Illinois by the end of the forecast period. So this is by 11 p.m. here. But if we jump back to around 4 p.m. where some of our severe weather might be getting going, you'll notice there's a lot of spin available through areas like St. Louis, south of Davenport, and eventually getting towards Indianapolis a little later in the evening. So that is definitely why we have that concern for a couple strong tornadoes that could be possible if things can get organized. But again, there's a lot of fail modes today. This is our 0 to 3 kilometer storm relative helicity. I'm just very briefly showing this so that you can see in the afternoon and evening some of these very high values making their way towards St. Louis, southern and central Illinois, and eventually even into Indianapolis as we let this loop finish out. This is now by 9 p.m. here on Sunday, and all the way to 11 p.m. you'll see that risk beginning to push off towards Kentucky and the Ohio Valley. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the timing for everything today. As you are going to see in the morning, we're just going to have all this precipitation out near Kansas City and throughout portions of Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, and Illinois as well. Throughout the early afternoon here, this is by 1 p.m. here on Father's Day, now 2 or 3 p.m., all of this precipitation is moving through St. Louis, southern Illinois, and that is going to bring kind of one of our fail modes again, is just the lack of time for the atmosphere to recover, as we're expecting all of these isolated thunderstorms that could produce our more significant severe weather to begin firing off around maybe 5 p.m. And as they continue to push out towards the southern portions of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, even into Kentucky, the atmosphere just won't have that much time to recover before they really get going. And that could definitely limit how powerful these storms are able to get and how much energy is available in the atmosphere for them. As we continue forward in time, we do have to look at the 6Z HRS. So this model run is slightly older now. We're going to watch these storms just continue to push to the southeast. This is by 8 a.m. on Monday. Precipitation all the way from New York down through the Dallas area. And then going into the day on Monday, you're going to see that risk pushing all the way through the mid-Atlantic into the Appalachians and all the way up through even Vermont, New Hampshire, and portions of the Northeast as well, where we could have the risk for some isolated wind damage. I'm not expecting anything significant. This is mostly just a precipitation event going on. But again, out here in the Virginias on Monday into the early evening hours is where we could definitely see the isolated risk for a tornado. Meanwhile, by the late hours on Monday, again, this is at 11 p.m., we do have more storms going on near Arkansas, Mississippi, even south of Oklahoma City and up in the high plains as well. So all sorts of areas of precipitation to look out for on Monday evening. And finally, I did want to show the significant tornado parameter because it is actually picking up on some of our fail modes here. As we get into the early afternoon here on Sunday, you'll see some of those values starting to get up and going near Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And we're also going to have a secondary target possible throughout the Oklahoma and Kansas border. I'm not terribly concerned about that, but you'll just see these values in our main concern area from St. Louis to Indianapolis and southern Illinois are just not very elevated. Even the significant tornado parameter is picking up on these fail modes for tonight's severe weather event. I'm not really expecting any kind of an outbreak. It's definitely possible that the stars align and we get a random supercell that's able to put down a strong tornado, but I'm not expecting any type of a robust outbreak where I'm significantly concerned about any type of major tornado risk here on Father's Day. And that's going to bring us to the end of today's forecast. Happy Father's Day, and thank you for choosing WillBrattonWx as your source of trusted severe weather information. We're probably not going live today as we're not expecting a robust severe weather outbreak. However, make sure that you have notifications turned on. You're following us on all platforms so that you can stay weather aware and stay safe. Thank you so much again for watching, and we will see you soon.